Welcome back to Junction 119. This is Kellan,
This is Casen.
and we're back. How you doing, man, on this fine day? Getting
Doing
started a little
good.
later than usual.
Doing good. Yeah. A little bit later, but yeah, it was a eventful Tuesday.
Oh, really? Like good or bad?
Just how work goes.
I do. Well, you see, it's interesting. Having spent some time out of the athletic scope, I should say, like a landscape, I should say. Now I'm back in it. Usually this is my chillest time of the week. Like Monday through Thursday, like I'm pretty I don't have as much going on as I do, the weekends whenever, the events I got to work and everything goes through, as is the life of sports information. But so, I got back to my apartment today just a little bit ago before we started the show here. And this is like not by any means an interesting story. Like everyone would be like, what kind of story is that, Kellen? But look, it's never happened to me before. This has never happened to me before. In all of my years of apartment living, Casen, there was a large Amazon package at my door. And I'm like,
Oh.
that's not for me. At least it shouldn't be for me. I went up. It was not for me. Um, it was like I live in this kind of complex to where like the numbers of the apartment units I'm in are not as obvious, but it was for a
hmm
different apartment complex here. And I saw what the mistake was, but like the mistake was kind of egregious. Like I had to go like almost to a different part. I had to walk almost a completely different part of that apartment complex to give this Amazon package to where it needs to go. And I'm like, wow, this person really just did not care. just did, just
Yeah,
just did
yeah.
not give a 2 cents at all of putting this Amazon package where it goes. So I don't know. And that's my
Yeah, we
little.
we had a lot of that in our old apartment. Yeah.
It's just the way the apartments are, I guess, over here. But like this was so egregious that I was like, okay, like really, like you clearly didn't look at anything beyond the GPS and saw, oh, number, okay, there it is. No, you had the completely wrong unit, sir, or madam, whoever it was. But anyway,
Yeah.
bottom line, package went where it needed to go, and now we're back here to talk about stuff. That's my little story to lead in the show. Relatively shorter lineup because last week we did our massive, in quotes, massive in all caps college football preview. I'll admit, I kind of, in listening back to it, I really felt like I could have contributed more myself, but I was kind of in the whirlwind of my work week. Shout out to a friend of the show, Matt, for joining us last week. But Case and I are here to
Absolutely.
talk about. We got four separate topics, and this is definitely one of those weeks where we pull out a segment that Kason is really good at these, but I have a note. I have also like a note sheet essentially in my phone of different segments we pull out whenever, quite frankly, we need an extra segment or two of like some things that like our listeners will find interesting. And Kason suggested a couple this time, but I thought, okay, we're going to spend a decent amount of time on one. So in this episode, you're going to get our top 5 favorite professional athletes of all time. After we talk about a couple of sports stories, and then we're going to wrap it up with a little bit of pop culture talk. So take it away, Kason. You sent me this story yesterday, and by the time this show goes out Wednesday, it'll only be a couple of days old, and it'll probably be developing story. So
Yeah.
take us through it.
All right. So I guess the big breaking news that really honestly helped us shape the lineup, and we were very grateful to the Indianapolis Colts on that one.
Yeah, thanks,
Uh,
guys. Appreciate
so
it.
so Jonathan Taylor requested a trade a while ago, and the Colts initially, were like, no, we're not going to trade you, and which fair. And then I guess after several conversations following their refusal to trade him, they have now, I guess, given him permission to seek a trade, which means that in all likelihood, he will be traded in the next couple weeks and be on a new team come week one.
Yeah,
So
was talking about the, well, okay, first of all, hang on. I don't want to dominate the conversation to start. What was your reaction to this, my friend?
I was a little surprised because I didn't really understand what leverage JT had.
Mm,
Like, I mean, it from the standpoint from I mean, to be perfectly honest, I mean he's been injured and his production has declined
it
because of
has.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, and granted, I think some of it might be a Colts issue that there was some issue with the scheme, and maybe when he was coming back from injury, the team wasn't as great around him to be able to benefit his running ability. But I mean, I just don't know what he's trying to get, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just thought it always fit. It made sense, and he was doing well there. And then I thought that the trade request was kind of like a comical, like just randomly disgruntled player. Like it felt very James Harden-esque to me, where it's like the second playing there gets hard, he just wants out.
Nice comparison there.
Because he like I mean it seemed like he was fine there when he was, you know,
right.
leading the league in rushing, and then once he kind of got injured and didn't succeed, which
Right.
he was on my fantasy team last year, and I was very frustrated with him last year about it.
Yeah, I think every fantasy owner in Jonathan Taylor in 2022 really was upset with the results. Given, I actually just pulled the numbers up here because I really wanted to make sure I put this into perspective. 2021 was a unbelievable season by NFL running back standard for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, obviously he was literally a league MVP candidate most of that year. You had that week right before Thanksgiving that season where he put up 5 touchdowns by himself against the Bills. That season, on 332 attempts, he had 1,811 yards, averaging 5.5 a carry, and had 18 touchdowns. And he also had 40 receptions that year, whereas last 2021, whereas last year, 2022, on 192 attempts, he had 861 yards, averaged 4.5, and had 4 TDs. Now, a lot of that, as you said, is attributed to injury. I don't know if I can go as far. I know you were just making a comparison, but we know I think really what you meant was the relationship between Jonathan Taylor and the Colts was nowhere near as tumultuous as, say, like a Harden has been with the 76ers, right?
Right.
I think that's what really surprised me. And it was almost, this whole story was actually this whole story really blew up about a month ago, like right as training camp was really starting, because there was that meeting. We didn't talk about it, I think, on our show because we already had enough going on in our lineup, but there was that story where like Jonathan Taylor first showed up to training camp, and then there was a moment where I guess Jim Irsay wanted a meeting with just him, and then following that meeting, Jonathan Taylor immediately was like, okay, requesting a trade. Like,
yeah,
that was when
of which it was like, what did Irsay say to him?
And I think, you and I even said to each other, I'm like, well, Jim Irsay, if the goal was to go to Colts camp and put this story to bed and like hopefully have like a kumbaya moment and, break bread with Jonathan Taylor, you completely botched if that was the goal. But since then, it sounds like that wasn't the goal. Since then, it sounds more like, look, man, and he even said he had sound bites where he was like, look, the league will be here long after myself and Jonathan Taylor. It's like, if anything, he sat there and said, look, we're not paying you X amount for a running back. Last year, you weren't good. Let's be real. And like, it sucks for Jonathan Taylor that he wasn't coming off of 2021 for his big deal. You know what I mean? Because not only would the Colts have had a legit, potentially, like real case to sign him to some sort of find a means to get you a deal, but other teams would be like, okay, yeah, we'll take Jonathan Taylor after the season he just had. I don't know. And then of course the 2022 happened. So that sucks for him. But all in all, though, I do want to shift because I had a conversation where I work today, Casen, of where's he going to go? Because I think if you're the Colts, you ask for a decent amount for him. Someone who I work with today actually had a very good suggestion of where he could go to where I'm like, ooh, he could do some damage there and it would make sense. But I'll wait to see what you say first. You're pretty good at these. I feel like you could arrive at it.
I mean, my best guess now would be maybe the Vikings, since they just got rid of Cook. They need a running back. I think they have what is it, Madison or something like that, or
I'll be honest with
whatever
you.
Whatever that guy's
I'm not
name
even
is.
going to sit here and pretend like I know who's on the depth
They had
chart
a number 2 that did pretty well
for running back. Vikings.
So yeah, I don't know if they are in the market, but yeah, I mean the Vikings, I guess, since they just got rid of Cook. So,
not bad.
Yeah, I mean there's numerous places, I think.
I just found a list here of like the situation ranking all 32 teams in like who needs a running back. Vikings are like 7th or 8th on this list. Now, granted, I don't know how recent this is, but the team that okay, so this is from a while ago. This is from like back in like late February. So, obviously circumstances have changed around the league since then. Still not necessarily out of the realm of possibility. Someone who I was talking with today said the Dolphins. And I was like, ooh, talk about decent assets to trade. They don't really have like huge semblance of a running game. Someone like a Jonathan Taylor could take a massive load off of Tua in the backfield. And they already are a pretty dangerous team in general, offensively. I was like, not a bad landing spot. Also, I'll let you comment on that, but also on this list is the Broncos. I don't know how much more sense that would make now, granted the changes of their situation since February, just in terms of this article. But Dolphins was the one that I was like, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. That's a pretty good answer to that question of where he can land. But ultimately, it's going to be whoever wants to play ball with the Colts.
Yeah, I don't really think that they'd want to trade him to the Dolphins. I mean, I feel like if there's multiple suitors and multiple teams he's willing to go to across conferences, they're not going to trade him within the AFC. I think that's pretty obvious, but I mean, I think it just depends on what the options are and what their offers are.
Well, I've also been. The Colts are not going to be a contender for the foreseeable future. Okay, at least to me, they're not. They're quite a few years away from being in the top dog of where they can contend in the AFC. And like, if you are a team like the Colts, how much do you factor in the do we want to trade him to the NFC thing when you're not? If anything, you put another roadblock in for the teams that are at the top of the AFC right now.
Yeah, that's true.
As a AFC fan, along with you, my dude, I wouldn't want him to. Sure, if you said, hey, he could be traded to the NFC, it's like, okay, great, but that's like the 10th thing on the list whenever, if I'm an NFL GM, when I look for a trade. It's like, look, to some degree, sometimes it's higher on the list, but and sometimes, depending on who you are, it can be top 5, but it's not always the first thing I think of. Carolina Panthers is on this list. I also see the Chicago Bears. Those are two others. Two NFC
also
teams.
very true. Maybe the Saints. I mean, we're not going to really talk about it, but I mean, I think they would prefer a quarter or a running back that is not named Alvin Kamara. Yeah, I mean, I think it. I mean, I think there's no shortage of suitors as far as people who would love to have Jonathan Taylor, even if he is only as good as he was last year. If you can get him for relatively cheap, I mean, he'd be a benefit. I mean, he'd be a value add to your roster for sure.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a 1-year rental or something like that, I think I think he's probably up for a contract. So yeah, I don't know. I even if it is just for a short-term rental, having him as maybe a dual, like a number 2 back or something.
Yeah.
To rotate in and out. I mean, hypothetically, well, I mean, we've seen the running back room in New York with the Jets, so I think that's definitely an option for some teams. If the Giants want to go wild and get him to add with Saquon, I don't know, go on the wishbone.
The one big thing I will say for all our listeners and just NFL fans in general to pay attention to when he gets traded and what he gets traded for. Because Jonathan Taylor let's be real, Jonathan Taylor's a very smart guy. He was accepted into Harvard. If you've ever heard any of his interviews, he's a very well-spoken and smart dude who is a cut above probably the average NFL player, especially in terms of contact positions, in terms of his just general intelligence. And he's been one of the most outspoken running backs as far as this whole running back turmoil has unfolded over the last couple of months. So I don't know. He only has so much control based on in terms of what his own value is, because it's ultimately up to the Colts of what to accept for him. But I'm going to be paying close attention to what he's traded for and when he goes, because I could totally see the Colts just sitting on his contract until like we get closer to the deadline, which I could see scenarios where that would be really bad for Jonathan Taylor, but also very good, because the deeper you go into the season, I think the more likely it is that maybe he could get dealt to someone whom he might really want to stay for a while, but you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, it's very possible that maybe they wait to trade him, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like if they're smart, they just get what the best option is they can now. But
Yeah.
which comes back to the point of what do you think? Which the Colts apparently are rumored to be looking for a first round pick or the value of a first round pick.
Mm.
So what would you think he's what do you think he's worth? Like, do you think he's worth anywhere close to that
Ah,
in this situation?
man, it pains me to say it, but I would say no, he's not worth like close to that. It depends on what you mean by close to that, because the Jonathan
Which
Taylor of 2 years ago, yeah, but that was, I think, potentially more of a fluke than the average, you know.
mhm.
So especially in a situation where the Colts didn't really have a whole lot of other stuff going on offense, other than Jonathan Taylor breaking it apart for 25 yards at a time. So I don't think they're going to get that. They might get a situation where they might get some second round pick, and it depends on how firm they want to stick on that, because unfortunately they're in a situation where Colts do have kind of all the leverage here, but I'm sorry, just that last year just really, really hurt his value. And I personally wouldn't deal anything that could compromise the immediate future of our franchise for him at this moment. That's just me.
Mhm.
I don't know. Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I mean, if I was a team that had multiple second round picks in next year's draft, I would maybe be willing to part with one of them. They're like if you were a team maybe like the Bears that have a ton of draft assets
Yeah.
that you acquired from trading down out of that first overall pick last year, or I guess this year. And then I mean maybe you'd be willing to relinquish one of your second round picks. And like I think that if maybe like a second and you know a future fourth, I mean that
Yeah.
seems relatively fair
And honestly, something like that could get it done. I really think.
under the assumption that there's going to be some kind of contract extension. I mean,
Yeah,
that would be a lot to give up if like he's walking out the door.
it would be. For him to go to a place like Chicago for that would I kind of pseudo like the
Mhm.
Bears because of friends of our show, obviously. But that would be cool. Bottom line, I really do like Jonathan Taylor as a guy, as a player, as an individual. I think he's good. I think he's just generally good for football, and I hope he is able to land somewhere where he can have another season similar to 2021, because he was like must
Mhm.
see. He was like must see TV that season. I mean, he had several of the greatest play. I mean, his game against the Bills was one of the best performances by a running back I had seen in maybe the previous 5 years, at a time when the position's kind of under attack. So,
Mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So shout out Jonathan Taylor, JT. Hopefully you land in a good spot, and well, we'll have to see what they get back for him there in Indianapolis. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I'll just add this other story in here as we stay in football real quick, just because it happened last night. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Do it.
The Baltimore Ravens lost their first preseason game since 2015 to the
Yeah.
Washington Commanders.
I'm clapping that up. I will say that I'll tell you what, for all the years I had to hear Ravens in the preseason, 99 overall, everything. It's like, great, cool. I'm so happy you can win all your preseason games. That's great. Apparently, it was a really good game. That's what I heard too. Like, it was an actually really good preseason game.
Yeah, yeah,
Commanders won by a point, I believe.
yeah. I don't know for sure what exactly happened, but yeah, it ended on a Joey Sly field goal.
So there you go. I mean, yeah. So how many years had that streak gone? Is that right in
I
front of you?
2015, so
Oh my,
7
that is so
and
long.
7 years in a game, I guess.
That's wild. Yeah, and yeah, if you're not familiar, yeah, the winning streak in the preseason that the Baltimore Ravens had, crazy, crazy stuff. But obviously, continuous indicators that preseason means nothing. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
now okay, so now let me ask you this little trivia thing. Who would you guess is now the current holder of the longest preseason winning streak.
Oh man, you know what? Someone said this in my I think someone said it in my general attention being paid, and for the life of me, I don't. I mean, there's no possible way of really even stringing together logically how I could find that out. That's what
Well,
sucks.
it's because it is equally as meaningless because it's the Las Vegas Raiders, of
Oh,
which
okay. Well, cool,
duh,
awesome.
like
That's like I
doesn't
was
mean
even
anything.
well. That's like when we did the trivia game, and even you've done trivia questions for me in the past. Like my brain does this thing where okay, what can I string together to try and figure that out? Like when we did the segment a few weeks ago of the you guess the stat kind of thing. I was like, for preseason games, I don't know. You could tell me I could literally throw a dart at a dartboard with all 32 teams and have just as much a chance as me thinking about it right now for any amount of time. Okay, cool. The Raiders. Good for you guys.
Yeah,
What's
well,
do we know how long the streak is? Is it like 2 years?
7. It's 7 games.
7 games.
So
Okay.
I guess what is that, like two? It'd be probably 2.5 years, maybe.
Yeah, two and a
I
half
don't know.
years. You figured four games like what, 3 years ago? 4
Yeah,
years ago, and then now 3 games. So
yeah.
cool. Shout out the Las Vegas Raiders. Have fun winning in the preseason and never in the regular season, I guess. Same goes for the Baltimore Ravens. Now you really have nothing to fall back on. But the offense is going to be great this year. Fantastic. Anyway, yeah. If this isn't obvious, we're a biased show against that team for
Yeah,
obvious reasons.
exactly.
As I gesture to the
Yeah.
Steelers and my friend here on the cast with me, who is a Cleveland Browns fan. So anyway, yeah. Okay, cool. Shout out the
And then
Commanders for ending that streak.
yeah. The of which very funny though that the Commanders, I believe. Let me double check this because I don't want to get this wrong real quick.
The Washington
The
Commies.
Let me see if I can double check that. So the Washington Commanders have not lost a game since Josh Harris acquired them. So
Another meaningless stat. Fantastic. You know what? Shout out the Commanders fans who are like, yes, all right. Good vibes already. Hey,
so
man.
things are looking up.
Hey, man, as long as we're keeping those vibes going, I'll sit here and say, look, the Steelers ones looked really good against the Buffalo Bills ones at home. And the Steelers won that preseason game. So, all right. Fantastic. It means just as much. Nothing really in long term. So, are we good to move on from the NFL? We're staying in sports.
I do actually have one more story to bring up because I totally forgot about it, and I just figured I'd bring it up since we did kind of talk about it.
Sure, go ahead.
Yesterday or last week.
We got
with
plenty
the
of stuff.
stuff.
We got plenty of stuff not to talk about. So go.
So I don't know if you saw this, but there was a story that came out, sort of, I guess, akin to the blindside stuff, where former Cleveland Browns quarterback and current Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Baker Mayfield, I guess,
yes,
filed some sort of discovery-based lawsuit situation against an investment firm that is run by his dad and brother, maybe. For I don't think it's alleging anything, but he's saying that he cannot find $12 million that he gave to them, and he wants to know where it is.
Yeah. And
so
there could
I don't
be
think
something
he's accusing
there.
anybody, but he's just saying, I gave you $12 million, where to go.
He's got a league. It's like right now I just see headlines that say there's a legal battle potentially brewing with his own dad. You know what it really makes me think of? You ever seen the 30 for 30 called Broke?
I was going to bring that up. Exactly.
Yeah. It like where various athletes, including one of the darker stories in that whole 30 for 30. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, listeners, go check it out. It is a 30 for 30 documentary about how professional athletes go broke. And there's some really rough horror stories in there of like some that we know about, some that you didn't know about. But like the Bernie Kosar stuff is like really dark in that, where he doesn't name anyone by name, but he does talk about various situations where people in his own family basically stole from him. And I was just like, there's even a quote by someone in that 30 for 30 that, that like was very poignant. Coming into money is like flipping on a light in a house in the ghetto. It exposes all the roaches and the rats. Like someone, I remember that. And what I say that I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but all I'm saying is that even people who are very close to you or have been very close to you, if you suddenly come into a lot of affluency for some reason, money, fame, whatever happens, anyone's got a story. People who suddenly didn't care about you or have a whole lot of attention suddenly have a lot of it towards your direction. And, it's kind of up to the individual to find out what's what.
Yeah.
And even in a situation like this, it might be a situation where he had the money to spend and some things were mismanaged with it. I don't know, but I did see that story, and immediately my mind went to $12 million was $12 million. Yo, family or not, what happened to my money?
Yeah,
Like,
of which
what happened to it?
to be entirely fair, that's like a third of what he's made so far.
Still,
From,
that's a third of what he's
at,
made.
at least from
money.
his NFL earnings, because I think that he only ever really had his rookie deal in Cleveland that made him any money, and I think he got like a $30 million signing bonus, and I think he was only making about $1 to $2 million in actual like salary per year.
That even further drives home the concern. I mean, you're probably not getting the massive QB deal you once thought might have been possible. You're probably never seeing that, Baker Mayfield.
Although I don't know how much money he got from all those commercials. So it could all be progressive money. I have no idea.
Yeah, I was going to say he was in every progressive ad for like a solid 2 seasons where it seemed absolutely was the case that he cared more about that than being a quarterback. So whatever. I don't know.
But I mean, this also made me think of the story. I don't know if you heard about this either, but the comedian Dane Cook, he ended up having to testify and send his own brother to jail because his brother was his business manager and basically stole millions of dollars from him. He was hiding revenue and all this type of stuff and not paying his taxes. And so he ended up having to send his own brother to jail. And it's the moral of the story that if you're rich and famous, do not ever hire your family members to be in charge of stuff.
And that's just it. Like that I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole either, but I have tended to agree with that as well. I'm like, you need professional people around you that cannot blur the line between family and business. Like when it comes to handling your finances, heck, that's almost general advice for life, Casen, whether you're rich and famous or not. If you come into money or the money you deal with, I'm serious, mainly just because having had things happen in all of our lives, sometimes when family gets involved, it gets nothing but messier. And so because there's cards that can be played and guilt trips that can be played based on you feel like you owe them, where it's like, if you're dealing with people who are professional, I don't owe you anything that I've not actually owed you in terms of like our contract. So I don't know. I think there's something to be said for what you just said there, my dude. But hopefully it doesn't go down a dark road, but one way or another, lessons will be learned. That's for sure. Moving away from that.
Yeah.
So I had to do some research on this next story, Casen, and to be honest with you, I couldn't find like a reputable enough, I don't want to say source, but I saw a lot of chatter from various not as accredited news sources about this. The story
we can get to the rumor, but
the rumor is that here's from Marca, .com. Not exactly the most reputable source that I would want, but Apple reportedly has plans or is interested in buying ESPN and getting rights to NBA, NFL, MLB, and more. That's the basic rumor, okay? I don't think you need to be a genius to probably figure that, we're probably headed in that direction. If it wasn't Apple, insert company here.
Yeah, I don't know how reputable the Apple portion of it is, but I think that if you look at everything that ESPN has, or that Disney has been doing with ESPN and as ESPN has been doing, and we've talked about their layoffs and we've talked about some of their financial issues, I don't think it takes a genius to figure out that they might be coming up for sale. And if you look at the fact of they're probably going to be shopped to be sold soon, you just look at who can afford to buy them. And like the list is fairly short over who would have, anywhere from $20 to $50 billion to pay for the leader in sports
Well, right. Well,
media.
the worldwide leader in sports. Well, again, we've talked. I think one of the themes of this year on our show, from one angle or another, from sports or pop culture, has been that Disney's not potentially not doing very well financially, or at least trying to resize. I mean, it's still Disney. Like every time I hear like these doom and gloom stories about how they are financially, people act like they're about to go bankrupt. That's not the case.
Yeah, I think
By any means,
what it is,
they're
I think
offloading
what it
stuff.
is, yeah. I believe what it is sort of, I think, coming to shape from Bob Iger coming in to try and clean up what mess was left for him in his temporary absence when he stepped down to then have to come back and clean up the mess from the last guy. Um, I think that it was a complete sort of mishandling of the pandemic, and I think that they're gonna have to downsize a little bit to do a lot more things well than do many things mediocrely, if that makes sense. Like they
Yeah,
definitely are way too big and way too spread and way too thin in certain areas that they need to have a bigger concentration and the ability to focus on. And so I think that ESPN is definitely a place that they can afford to maybe say this does not really fit our areas of expertise. Like it's not a Disney movie, it's not, Marvel, it's not
no.
ABC. Even ABC sort of makes sense. And so it's just kind of like you separate those as different things. Like ESPN as its own entity does not belong in the Disney family.
I can totally see a future here not that long from now where ESPN is sold in its entirety to some other conglomerate. If it were Apple, uh, like that's the closest thing to a potential dystopian situation I can think of. I feel that way about Apple owning quite a few things just because they have I mean, Apple at its core is a hardware company. And when it's like, when you mix those two things, anytime Apple's gotten their control of certain things, they've gotten a sizable amount of control over that industry, stemming obviously
Yeah.
from music to today. That was actually one of the reasons why the original Apple TV device, which was rumored to being made for the longest time, didn't have any major like backing because no one wanted to give Apple all of that. This was like 10, 15 years ago, around when that previous strike was happening. No one wanted to give Apple the same power that at the time they had over the music industry. Which they've
Mm-hmm.
since kind of relinquished quite a lot of, just because as technologies move forward and streaming's become a thing. I bottom line is I don't want there to be a situation where certain sports content I have to have a certain device to do it. Okay. I don't want us to hit that point in life. Certain things I get it. Okay. But I can even pull up like Apple TV, the actual thing, on like a Vizio television, as I gesture to mine. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like that's the thing. I don't want us to, and it wouldn't be a savvy business decision, I don't think, potentially, of, oh, you can only get ESPN device products, services, whatever on your Apple device, which at least for me, I know for a fact that'd be good with a phone because I'm an iPhone user and you are too. Um, but I don't know. I never like that stuff. I never like any situation where that could be the case. So if this rumor actually builds into more than just a rumor as time goes on, you know, keep your eyes on.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, I definitely don't think that they would be as, I guess, shrewd as to say you can only get it on Apple TV devices. I
Mhm.
don't think they would do that because, like you said, you can get the Apple TV streaming app on other devices currently. So I think that they know that when it comes to like original programming and like actual like shows, you want other people to be able to watch it and pay for your subscriptions.
Yeah.
So I think that it's just that's definitely where I think we are leaning towards is that ESPN might end up just becoming the new like might becoming essentially Netflix but sports,
Yeah.
where like it's if ESPN gets sold away from Disney/ABC, I don't think they're going to be a cable network anymore.
No.
I think that it's essentially going to be I mean, maybe it'll be available on like YouTube TV and stuff, but I mean, I think it could be very possible that it's only available on the ESPN
I think
like streaming options.
you don't have to look this up right now, but I think I saw a news story in this past week or 2 weeks that for like the first time ever, cable users have dipped below 50% of households in like the United States or something like that, which
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw that as kind of an attention grabby headline because I'm like, wait, what are they basing that on? Like households with families, household like what constitutes as a household? But the whole bottom line of I didn't look too far into that, so I'm not going to spend or waste anyone's time by going into that. All I'm saying is that it like subscription, like ESPN's almost already basically a subscription service anyway. If you want access to it on most devices,
Mm-hmm.
and you're right, maybe I should look at this less as the worry of the situation, and more look at it as this is just kind of the next step of where this kind of media is headed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if the Apple part isn't true, but if you kind of read the tea leaves and look at the activities, I mean, there have been some advertisements for a Disney Plus and Hulu bundle that don't advertise ESPN as being involved, and
Anymore.
like
Yeah.
there's some stuff that like definitely is like segmenting ESPN away from being a part of the family, and you kind of are like, okay, like something's going on, and
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
so just keep an eye out for that. I mean, we'll see. We'll see.
And we'll be here to talk about it when the time comes that you need to change around your subscriptions. But is it time to get into the top five, Casen? This is where I want to spend the most.
Yeah, I think
This is where I
so.
want to spend a decent amount of time for the rest of the show, and then we've got our one last pop culture thing to kind of talk about. So, let me just say that this was difficult for me. Like I didn't realize even when we were texting on Monday night about this, I really didn't realize until I was doing research during the day, Tuesday, and this is going out Wednesday. Did I realize how difficult this was? And listeners out there, you should like your top five favorite professional athletes of all time. If you're a sports fan to the extent that we are, there's a few angles you can take with this. For me, mostly, I won't, okay, I don't want to spoil this too much. Do you allegiant more with the teams you root for or who has entertained you? Like, I talked to someone today about like, people like the individual sport, players, things like
Yeah.
that. People who admire LeBron simply for what he's done, even though he's never played for a team they like. Where does your mind go with it? For me, being from Pittsburgh, all of mine have something to do mostly with how they are all male have helped my teams. But I don't know how you did this. So I'm
Yeah,
curious.
I mean, I think it honestly just kind of depends. I mean, I think I have a little bit of both. I think, and that's a fair. Is that it just depends on I where you approach each slot, I guess.
I am really excited to hear yours and hear the reasoning behind it. Mine, I think, are going to be kind of boring for any of our listeners.
I think I think I will just say a disclaimer of like I didn't really grow up paying like watching sports a ton like a lot of people, and so most of mine are relatively recent.
Do you realize how many people knowing you in your life right now would be shocked that you just said that? Maybe they
Yeah.
wouldn't be. I'm shocked to hear that.
Yeah, I mean I just didn't grow up always paying attention.
I got you.
And so it was just sort of a thing that I honestly could quite literally it was like after high school.
Well, and well, here's the other thing too. This is professional athletes. Like if you had said athletes of any kind, I really would have had to think about it because I immediately took all collegiate athletes out of there. So periods of time, even in my life, got people who I grew up with who ended up going on to be great.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I had to like completely pull that out. These are people who
well,
are professionals.
I don't have any have any college ones on here either. But I didn't even actually intend that to be professional.
Right. Well, right.
That
right.
works.
but I'm just saying, if you had said athletes, there's a few college athletes I probably would have tossed in my top five, and maybe I can talk about that at a separate.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if you. Yeah,
let's go 5-1. I say we
Yeah.
each go five. We go number per number, like we've done our rankings in the past. So you can start.
Okay.
Because I have an honorable
All right.
mention to start mine,
Okay.
and then I'll say who my five is.
I guess this might get a little antiquated. Okay, so I'll start with number five. This one might be a little weird and off the wall, like we were talking about it last night. Five is like I also kind of had about four easy options. Five, I kind of had to get a little out of the box, and I went with, because this is somebody who definitely did actually like affect my childhood to the point where I remember many occasions watching him swimming laps in a swimming pool
Oh,
in Athens, in Beijing, in London, and that is the Michael Phelps.
I love it.
I mean, Michael Phelps uh, seems like a great dude, and one of the greatest swimmers of all time. And
Probably the
just
greatest swimmer of
watching,
all time. Let's just be real.
probably,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Um, I mean, and watching him, progressively from Athens to Beijing to London. I mean, you could just see how dominant he was in the sport, and it was awesome.
And when you figure, those Olympic sports can be, especially having been in places where I've worked where they don't get as much attention as they should with how good they are. Like, to be that consistently good 4 years apart for that long, to put up a number
Yeah.
that'll just never be touched in terms of just medals and gold medals in general. Um, Not to mention just the relay against the French back in, I want to say it was 2008, just the rivalry that spurned there. Like, he made swimming must-watch TV during the Olympics. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
which
I
is
mean,
ridiculous.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I will even get. I mean, I credit like like there was something that switched around the time too in Beijing, where it's like the swimming and the gymnastics were like the two
Yeah.
appointment television things for the Olympics for a while, because the
Oh,
U.S. gymnastics team was
yeah.
so entertaining. And I mean, it was honestly even just around with Beijing when that like kind of media circus sort of started with that. And I think Michael Phelps really started it because his run in Athens, I think, sort of made people want to pay attention to the Olympics. And it was sort of just kind of with the advent of television being much more available and the coverage being much bigger, that like as TV coverage exploded, he was this perfect like young guy to make into this star about it.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah, it was
I mean, he
it was
hosted
'08 where
SNL.
yeah. It was the '08 where he got the '08. But I mean, dude, NBC had to flip their whole Olympic like prime time scheduling because of him, and Olympics, to make sure it was always prime time. Also, he started at a time when we didn't have social media quite to the point where we knew the results by when, like, the moment
Oh
they
yeah,
happened. Like,
they
that, even though it was on the
the
other side of the world, we didn't know
that
until we
is great.
saw it.
It was also even taped too. I think a lot of the
It was
times,
on tape
depending
delay.
on the time,
Mm-hmm.
it was like hours earlier, and then it was taped and aired in prime time, like 8 o'clock
So yeah,
Eastern.
you didn't know if it was a gold until he did the thing. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it was just, I think he came up also at the right time too. And yeah, shout out Michael Phelps, man. Good number five, dude. Wow, that's really cool. So I have an honorable mention. My honorable mention that I was like between this person and this other guy for five is Chris Letang, current defenseman
mm, mm.
for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I guess another one. I mean, I guess another one could be Pascal Dupuis, and another like honorable mention. Just like guys who've had such good careers with the Penguins, who I associate. But Chris Letang, low draft pick, battled for everything he has, still is with the Penguins, and has been a part of all three of the Cup wins. 9, 16, 17. And it's not the last time I'm sure I'll talk about the Penguins in this. My actual number five, though, is Troy Polamalu, arguably the greatest NFL safety of all time.
At 5?
At
Wow.
5, okay? I have reasons for it. I know he's at 5. I can already hear some people saying, really, at 5? Listen, when you're from Pittsburgh, there's a lot of good athletes to choose from, okay?
That's fair.
Like,
I think I have the vision for the rest of your
I mean,
slate then.
I didn't even say that to sound like a dick just now. I said that because it's just true. Like, I was going through all the lists and I was like, man, like, favorite of all time, with the sheer joy and happiness that these people have brought me in my life. I mean, yeah. So Troy Polamalu doesn't need to be said. The man's entire just you can just Google his highlights and have a great time. Caused rule changes, like people who changed the game, literally is the reason why you can't jump the snap count anymore in the NFL, because he did it all the time. for his entire career, most people in the league said he was the scariest player in the league because he will come out of nowhere, knock you all the way out, and then like pray for you and help you up and never, talk trash. I think TJ Houshmandzadeh even had like a soundbite here recently. He tried to talk trash to Troy Polamalu one time, and he said, "Hey man, I'm going to pray for you," and he never did it again. It was like mind games, but Troy wasn't even playing mind games. That's just how he was. And so, yeah, great guy, just Hall of Famer, one of, if not the greatest, strong and free safety. He played both amazingly in NFL history, and you never knew where he was until the hair would just come out of nowhere, flashing, and then bang. Also famously offered to Bill Cowher to take a goal line play in the Super Bowl, which to this day I wish they would have let him do. In Super Bowl 40, there's a soundbite where he was dead serious. He walked up to Bill Cowher. He's like, "Yo, if we get down to the one goal line, can I like take it and let me go over the top?" It's like, no, we're not doing that. Let me go over the top, coach. And he was dead serious. And it's like, dude, can you imagine if not just number 43, Troy? It's like, why is Troy in there? Hands off, jumps in. So I would have been like, well, this is like, why not? Against the Seahawks in 2005. Anyway, that's my number 5. Go for it.
That's nice. That's nice.
Troy, shout out. Great.
So at number 4, I will, I guess, go ahead and give some love. I mean, I've already talked about him quite a lot, but I will go ahead and say Jonathan Marchessault from the Golden Knights. I mean, I really struggled with like picking a favorite, but I have to give credit to one of the original guys, and I feel bad even like singling out a favorite, but as the Conn Smythe winner and everything that he's done, I think that his story is honestly is like super cool with the team, and so I think that would be definitely my favorite Golden Knight.
I love that so much. This is where things are going to get interesting for me. And there's a reason why I kind of wore what I wore today for the show. Number 4 for me is Derrick Rose. I was really thinking hard about this, and I was like, athletes whom in their prime I just absolutely loved. Every moment they would do anything. In his case, anytime he touched the ball. Young Derrick Rose, like 2008 to 2016 Derrick Rose with the Chicago Bulls is the reason I'm a Chicago Bulls fan and have liked that team more than anything else. That's the era of Bulls basketball I remember. Him, Luol Deng, Carlos Boozer, Joakim Noah, just that core was so good, and he was explosive. I think to this day he's the youngest player ever to win the league MVP, which I'm trying to see here right off the top.
I mean,
probably 2011. He may not be anymore because of some recent play, but at the time he was the youngest ever to win the league MVP, doing so in his 3rd season, I believe. And interestingly enough, he's about to go to the Grizzlies now, and he's actually going. He's not going to wear number 1 anymore. He's going to wear his number 23. But the other thing is, I've sent you TikToks and such of the career that we never got from Derrick Rose. That's the other thing. He's a good dude, but like also at the same time, there's a should have been story with him, and despite that, it's never shaken his legacy that he left in Chicago that I've seen there. He's one of the most beloved players there who in their long history has, never won a title. Obviously the 3-peat guys are the double 3-peat in the 90s, but anytime he goes back and they announce Derrick Rose, it's like his number should be hanging someday. And hopefully maybe it will be. Number 1 will go up to the rafters in Chicago, but Chicago dude comes back. I remember being so pumped when I was a kid of the comeback when he had the knee injury. Little did any of us know that he was never, ever going to be the same. And there was the year where they were eliminated by LeBron's Heat team in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I remember thinking, this is it for the next 10 years. It's Rose and LeBron over there at the Heat. It's like the two of them. And we never got that. So for the sheer joy that he brought me and a lot of folks in Chicago, for someone who's not even from Chicago, Derrick Rose is my number 4. So there you go.
That's great. That's a really good pick.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and stick with basketball here for my number 3.
Nice.
And I'll go with Kobe Bean Bryant.
Yeah. I
Um,
thought about him as well.
uh, I mean, absolute stone cold killer on the court, and off as well. I mean,
In
just
life. I mean, just in
in
general.
life.
My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, he was nothing but a gamer when he thought about, you know, professional moves, business moves, and everything. And it was just sort of like, this is like one of the greatest just professional athletes when it comes to how he dealt with everything. And yeah, I mean, I think definitely the tragic accident was horrific, and we lost what could have been a really, really entertaining, I think, post career lineup of different activities and different projects and different things that he could have been
Yeah,
doing.
and when this show didn't exist when that happened, but when Kobe passed, I mean, especially with everything that's been talked to about him since then, it's like, man, we lost such an amazing among all of them. We lost amazing human beings. We lost an amazing human being in Kobe Bryant, and I think that just the sheer respect he has in every professional context he was ever in, even post basketball. Um, even things that even relationships that you didn't necessarily realize he had, like some of the sound bites that have come out this year from Taylor Swift about her relationship with Kobe Bryant, and just the little sound bites about like how much respect he had for anyone who's at the top of their game in their industry and what they've had to do to sacrifice to be
Mm-hmm.
at that. It's like he was one of those people who, if you hit that point in respect, like, I hope I'm as good at anything as like the Mamba mentality is to get as good as Kobe was, say, at basketball. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to add that piece.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, yeah, I mean, I'll always remember watching his last game, and even at the incredible feat that was his performance in his last game.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness, man. That's that's.
Great stuff.
I was watching with my guys who I lived with in college, and that is actually one of my favorite sports memories of watching anything with friends. So, because also that night was the Warriors going for the record night. Remember? It was like
Hmm.
it's like, which one are you watching? It's like, I'm watching Kobe's last game. I mean, what do you mean? Like, of course I'm watching that. So
Yeah.
that's a great number 3. Um, I just needed to take a look at my list here because, again, this is someone whom is as high on the list because of a lot of things that if I went too far into it might make me emotional. My number 3 is Andrew McCutchen, current member of the Pittsburgh Pirates,
Mm.
number 22 for all time. Dude, I like, there are so many happy memories and moments that I attribute with my family and friends that directly relate to his play, but also the era of Pirates baseball that he brought in. I mean, just having never seen any semblance of winning Pirates baseball prior to him, I'll never forget. Like, I to this day, I never saw a winning Pirates team before Andrew McCutchen, and I had this mentality for a while there that I never would again post him. Um, and he's added to his legacy with the fact that he came back this year. He might just he's probably just going to stay a Pirate till he retires now. And honestly, barring he doesn't, he's already played well enough, I think, this year to warrant another contract going into next year. He might just be year to year now, but the city really embraced him. I mean, just even the soundbite he had in the opening video. He narrated the opening video of the season this year, and he was like, I came in through the Fort Pitt tunnels. It was the most beautiful thing that I'd ever observed. Like that made me tear up because I was like, man, this guy who has embodied the city and a franchise that had nothing, like easily the most beloved player, Pittsburgh Pirate, since Roberto Clemente, and I say that with all the weight in the world. Um, a guy who's continuing to add to his legacy in Pittsburgh. Went away, came back, great guy off the field. Hit his 2000th hit this season in Pittsburgh, where it all started. In a lot of ways, Kutch may never win a World Series, at least not in Pittsburgh, but he's left a World Series worth of legacy in my hometown. That's for sure. So, not to talk
Great pick.
everyone's ear
Great
off about
pick.
McCutcheon. But
No, that's fine.
we have some great, there's some great number five through ones here. Moving on to number two.
Yeah. The no number two, obviously, I'm gonna have to go with and I guess the second Wisconsin Badger that we're gonna talk about today, and recent NFL Hall of Famer Joe Thomas,
Interesting. Okay, I wonder.
Cleveland Browns
Cool.
left tackle. Um, I mean, I think a lot of the what I love about Joe Thomas is just sort of the mythical nature of his career, where I mean he has the NFL snap count record, 10,636, I think is what it is.
Yep.
It's something like that. 363 maybe. Anyway, the yeah, he basically like got his first snap in his first game, and then he got injured in like December of his last year, and then just never played again. So he just went pretty much all the way straight through, and that I think was insane. And he put himself through a lot of pain and suffering to be on the field every Sunday for a team that was really not good. But he cared because he adopted the city of Cleveland as his own, and he loves the people, he loves the fans, and I think I definitely respect somebody who really puts that much effort into doing a thankless job on a pretty bad team for that long.
It's
Especially
interesting.
from the fact that like he was offered a trade to go to Denver the year they won the Super Bowl, and he said no.
He said no. Yeah, I do remember that. I will say that I've had this thought before, but I wanted to go ahead and just say it on record. I've had this thought about Joe Thomas before. If the Browns had 11 players any given year that are at the caliber of Joe Thomas, as good as he was at his position, they would have won the Super Bowl already by now. Maybe a few times.
Oh yeah.
I pulled up his credentials here. I didn't realize he was in the College Football Hall of Fame too. That's pretty sweet. I didn't realize. I knew he just got into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at a million times over deserved. To go into the NFL Hall of Fame at his position, and to do that in this day and age, I mean, you truly have to show. I mean, just to be the absolute one of the non doubt greats, and for a franchise like the Browns have been, unfortunately, since 1996, since they came back. I'm sure Joe Thomas also, who's also very outspoken about the Browns at times where it's even annoyed me in Pittsburgh social media with how good he is to the Cleveland franchise. He's one of those people that'll definitely be front and center in the parade. Even go as far as to say almost maybe kind of your spiritual successor to Jim Brown, since he passed away earlier this year. Kind of one of those guys from this new era. Like, obviously, Jim Brown goes way, 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 way back. But I mean, among the new era, there's probably very few Browns that are as beloved as Joe Thomas. So
yeah. I mean, as far as the old like brand ambassadors from previous teams, it was Jim Brown and Bernie Kosar were like the two sort of like spiritual leaders of the Browns. And then I think with Jim Brown's passing, Joe Thomas is going to essentially become sort of the next spot, and he's already involved. He's been involved in a lot of production stuff with game days, and so he's always around, which is you love to see it.
Shout out Joe Thomas. There for the roughest of times, but he'll be there for the good times as well.
Yeah,
hopefully someday for the Browns. At number two, okay, people are probably going to be mad at me for this one. But my number two favorite professional athlete of all time is Sidney Crosby. Sidney Patrick Crosby. Yes. Of Halifax, Nova Scotia, arguably the greatest hockey player of all time. And the hockey player that I would say if you dropped him with his skill level back when Gretzky played, we wouldn't be talking about no Wayne Gretzky. He'd be a solid number two. And I say that so that it makes the hockey people mad that come across our show, because that's how good I think Sidney Crosby is. But in all seriousness, I know a lot of people in Pittsburgh kind of like will say, the thing holding me back from my lifetime is that like Lemieux, if Lemieux's top three, obviously behind Gretzky and others and Bobby Orr and others, um, by the time it's all done, Sid I think will absolutely be a top five. I just and I know it's always been talked about rigged or whatever, but the reality of the situation is people hated Sidney Crosby early in his career. He had this unfair reputation of being a crybaby, doing this, doing that. In reality, I've watched so many other teams, and especially all of your teams, people who would always tell me that protect your star as well. Dylan Larkin, among others. Detroit people really associate their hatred with the Penguins towards Sidney Crosby because he was the last captain to hoist the Stanley Cup in Joe Louis Arena. Thank you very much. Of any hockey team. That's just true. That's just a factual thing that I said. I said it before on this show. I just love reminding Detroit fans that is the case. That being said, I just Sid off the ice, it never gets talked about because he is so quiet. I mean, that's kind of like a hockey thing anyway. But if you look up some of the stories about Sidney Crosby off the ice, just the story I heard just this year that one of the, I think 17 when we won the second in a row, there was this blind patient in a hospital where he was at who was a fan of his and whatever, went up to him and he said, my favorite player ever is Rocket Richard. And he literally took the hand of the blind guy and found it on the cup so that he could feel that it was the Stanley Cup and could feel Rocket Richard's name. I mean, there are so many. That's just one story. There's stories of him going off and he sees a kid practicing and he'll just get out of his car and do it. I mean, Sid off the ice, Sid the kid as we knew him when he first came in is such a good human being and has done a lot for the city beyond just winning championships and is continuing to go. And I'm not going to sit here and think that he couldn't have one more in him before it's all done. But Sidney Crosby, for all of the, again, just joy and happiness that he's brought my family, my friends, people who even sort of like the Penguins, and not to mention all of the players, Casen, that I covered as an SID who, like 10 of them told me their favorite player growing up was Sidney Crosby. I'm like, yeah, I know it is because he's got every piece of the game on lock. He's the guy you strive to be. So yeah, Sid. So
good choice.
Hey man, people, you hate him because you don't have him. That's the story of Sidney Crosby's career, man. It pretty just much is. If you do hate him at this point. Anyway, number one, I am very, very interested to see what you have to say because I think anyone who knows me knows who my number one is just off the top of my head because of how much I talk about it. But maybe some people really don't. Yours, I have no idea who you would.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, mine's going to be a little anticlimactic, I think. Then,
really,
because my number one is going to have to be King James.
It is
LeBron James.
It's LeBron. Okay, I wondered if that was the case. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, okay. I mean, I would say, I definitely. I mean, I remember playing basketball in our driveway when I was 8, wearing a LeBron James jersey. I mean,
for sure.
I mean, it's just how that goes, and the superstar nature of it. I mean, and it definitely helped. Of like, I think it wasn't always. It's probably not always the case for everybody, but it's just like when he was in Cleveland, like he was from Akron and he was playing for Cleveland, and it's just I would say most kids in Ohio would probably say, on some sort of like biological level of like that's what happened if they grew up around the time when he was in Cleveland the first time. And then it only elevated, when he won us a championship in 2016. And I mean, being there at the parade was awesome, great stuff. So yeah, I mean, I definitely have to give a lot of credit to LeBron James.
For sure. And my comments on LeBron are, I feel like regardless of any situation you might feel about how it's gone since he left Cleveland the second time, Cleveland wouldn't have any titles without LeBron, like for anyone this age, and kind of goes without saying, but
no, I mean,
yeah,
I definitely sort of, I think, believe things could have been handled differently the first time, but I definitely don't blame him for leaving the second time. Mm-hmm. I mean, things just sort of fell apart after the 17 playoff run, and it was just kind of like, yeah, things sort of ran their course. I mean, okay. I mean, like the writing was on the wall. And it's fine. I mean, because the Cavs are good now, so I don't.
Well, right. It's
We
kind of water under the bridge now.
we tanked and reloaded, and it's fine.
I mean, on paper, the Cavs are arguably better than the Lakers are right now. So, just true. Yeah, and yeah. So shout out LeBron. Obviously, there's not more that I can continue to say or won't we say in the future. If you know me, you know that my favorite professional athlete of all time is also my favorite Steeler of all time is Jerome Bettis. Is Jerome? I like to say Jerome Abram Bettis Sr., I should say, also known as the Bus, of course. He was back at a time when the running back position was more prominent than it is now. I was a stockier kid growing up. I played football and I always played on the line, but every Sunday I saw a dude as big as me running over the best linebackers and quite frankly players in the NFL every week. And then as he got older, he was the guy whom you would give. He was the original guy, at least for my. I don't want to say original. He was one of the original guys in that hard nosed like Steeler football days where I need 5 yards no matter what. He's getting the touchdown. I just he in his later days he was still so valuable that it's like, okay, if we need a goal line situation, give it to the Bust and he will get that and probably 15 more yards potentially if he's able to break that apart. But my point in saying that is I'm not sure if we'll ever see a back like the Bust again. The closest thing we had recently was Marshawn. And there's like because even like you say a Derrick Henry nowadays, big backs like that, there's still an element of finesse that they need to have in their game. And not that Jerome didn't. I mean, you got to go look up his late 90s highlights, especially like right after the trade from the Rams happened. He was always definitely unstoppable and he was definitely more versatile. He got less as he got older. But the thing is, he completely encompassed the Steeler football time of the day. Still good?
Yep.
Cool. I just want to make sure I hit a technical difficulty there, but he completely he embodied Steeler football of the day. And I also like to point out this. He was the catalyst for the amazing play that Ben Roethlisberger had in his younger years, but literally was the thing that Ben was motivated to win a Super Bowl for. Literally told Jerome, if you come back one more season, and I quote, I will do everything in my power to get you a Super Bowl win. And amazingly made it happen. Up to and including the fumble against the Colts that Ben had to make a shoestring tackle to save literally his arguably whole legacy. Like I even talk about that. That is my favorite thing Ben Roethlisberger ever did. And that is up to and including every pass he threw to help us win a Super Bowl. Because if that had been the last image of Jerome, that would have been like the most career defining thing that happened. And it was just an absolute horrible thing. And I always say that is my favorite thing Big Ben ever did was save the legacy potentially of Jerome Bettis. So that's my number one to this day. Still love him. He's on my bucket list of people to meet. Hopefully I can nowadays. He also just finished his degree at Notre Dame like in the last few years. So went back and he returned. And I think his daughter's about to go to college there. Anyway, he still has a lot of legacy at Notre Dame as well. But Jerome, the Bust Bettis, love him so much, NFL Hall of Famer. And I literally teared up when I saw his bust in the Hall of Fame in Canton. I will go ahead and just that was one of the greatest moments of my life when he actually like gave his speech, just because it's like, I don't know, there has not been, and the other thing is there has not been a player on the Steelers since Jerome that I have loved even a fraction as much. I mean, I just, and there's no way I could. Is it possible? Maybe, but we'll see. So that's it. That's the list. That's I'll run through it again just to recap it. If I can remember the order I said. Number 5, Troy Polamalu. Number 4, Derrick Rose. Number 3 was Andrew McCutcheon. Number 2, Sidney Crosby. Number 1, Jerome Bettis.
Yeah. And then I had number 5, Michael Phelps. Number 4, Jonathan Marchessault. Number 3, Kobe Bryant. Number 2, Joe Thomas. And number 1, LeBron James. Any surprises I have one main surprise on your side.
I'll be real. For me, the surprise, there were two surprises. One, I thought Michael Phelps, incredible addition for the reasons you gave too. But like, I think anyone who's like a half decent sport loving American can attribute like 1 to 2 incredible memories of Michael Phelps to where we all felt really patriotic. You know what I mean? LeBron at number 1, I wasn't really sure about. Like I figured there'd be a couple of NBA just because of your fandom in general and your knowledge level of the NBA. To put LeBron still at number 1, I wasn't sure what the rapport of his reputation was for yourself nowadays. I mean, I know there's other friends of the show have varying opinions about LeBron. I just wasn't sure if he was going to hold that spot number 1. Like I would have been more inclined to think like a Joe Thomas would be number 1. And I was going to be like, oh, okay, like number 2 still.
Yeah.
But I guess that's those were the 2 main surprises for me. And I guess the only thing I'll say about Marchessault is like, you're such a recent fan of the Knights, but like you were so enthralled with his story that I thought him being on this list isn't really that surprising because you kind of taught me about him. So
yeah,
those were my surprises.
Okay, yeah. My general surprise was more of the fact that like Lemieux wasn't on the list at all.
See, here's the thing. I thought about that, and if anything, I could put him at like a like an honorable mention, and I don't mean any disrespect. I mean, I have said this before. Lemieux is on my Pittsburgh sports Mount Rushmore, which is a whole other thing we can do sometime. I don't want to reveal who the other ones are, because of what he did, but you got to understand, I don't really remember him playing. Like when he came back, it's like the same thing of like if I were to sit here and say like I remember Jordan in his prime. I don't remember Jordan in his prime. I was born in '94. Like when the new millennia rolled around, I was 6 years old, and I didn't really start paying attention to sports in that way until 6 or 7. And keep in mind, I didn't play hockey growing up. So I wasn't watching, and the Penguins were really bad when I was young. Even with Lemieux on the team, when he came back to kind of be the player owner, Penguins were awful. And it took me really until Sid was coming around, like post lockout, to really get into hockey in that way. As I got closer to high school, plus our high school was pretty good at hockey through my time there, that there was kind of that resurgence, which is why Lemieux as a player isn't necessarily on my list. But all the rest of those are guys that I've seen a lot, if not their whole careers, you know? And so I associate more directly with their performances, if that all makes sense.
Absolutely.
In terms of sports ownership, the greatest sports owner that's been the case since I've been alive is Mario Lemieux. As far as I'm concerned, he's the only. I will say this: he's the only figure in sports who has arguably had a better, if not just as good, career as an exec in the modern era as he was a player. He's one of the handful. Like is a massive winner no matter where he's in hockey.
I mean he attributed to all 5, and so
literally, yeah. That's why people say. I mean, like he's the most influential figure in the history of the Penguins. That's not even like debatable. But that's why he's almost always on every Pittsburgh sports Mount Rushmore. Because it's like, yeah, the Pens don't have any titles or potentially even exist without him, even if they had titles.
Yeah.
So, saving the franchise and everything. So, yeah, shout out Lemieux, but that's why he wasn't on my list per se. So
fair.
If I was going to switch him out for anyone, I guess it would be Sid because he's been more influential for the Penguins. So, move Lemieux up there and everyone moves back a spot.
Yeah.
I mean, okay,
fair.
But yeah, but that's the thing. I was talking to someone even today, Case, and this is going to sound so arrogant, but I could make a top 5 favorite Steelers list too, and Penguins probably. Like that's when you get to count your blessing. I could do that for the Pirates too, honestly. But that's the thing. You could probably do Browns. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Top 5 favorite Browns players of all time. Top 5 favorite Cavs. You can have top 5 the whole roster for Knights. 1 through 23.
There's definitely there's
Anyway,
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, let us know your favorites out there. If there was some the diehard fans, you always do. what your favorite professional athletes are out there. I'd love to hear some, but yeah, it was really nice to go through the memory lane, and I knew this would be a fun segment that we could talk about. So, yeah. Anything more? We can get to our very last topic.
I think we can move along here.
So, going into Wednesday morning, by the time you will hear this cast, Ahsoka will have premiered on Disney Plus. The latest Star Wars show following the adult and well into her life Ahsoka Tano, famous character and art, probably a top 5 popular Star Wars character all time. If you are heavy into the Star Wars lore, I haven't watched her previous adventures. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I have, and really that's the theme of this conversation. But Casen and I just kind of wanted to preview it. Casen, what's your level of excitement for it?
Yeah, I mean, like here's the interesting thing about this is that I would probably have to say that the level of excitement is a little measured just from the aspect of like it doesn't feel like it's been really pumped up that much. And it's definitely very odd that I believe they were actually originally supposed to be released on Wednesdays, and then for some reason they all of a sudden like within the last couple weeks announced they were like releasing them at 9 o'clock Eastern on Tuesdays.
Yeah,
And which is interesting. I mean, definitely interesting
it's
because
attention grabbing for sure.
I think that they're definitely trying to toy around with the like prime time drops rather than like 3 a.m. in the middle of the night. Like, what is the point of this? So I think they're definitely trying to create some sort of prime time like scheduled event that people pay attention to.
At least artificially, they're trying to, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
which is a
yeah,
whole other conversation over like streaming versus like
right,
regular TV. But
right.
yeah, I mean, I think it's their way of trying to make this show or trying to generate buzz around the show that they don't think has enough buzz, if that makes sense. Which I think is a little sad. Because the show definitely has potential, and I think the story about it could be very interesting. And I think it's going to eventually play into the Mandalorian and stuff, and it's going to come into that. But it's definitely sad to see them not really push it very much. Like, definitely not as much as as much as they would have for like another season of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of that is a lot of the marketing of this show has honestly been word of mouth from like previous Ahsoka fans. Like I've seen a lot of that chatter of saying, "Hey, do you guys realize that if you're a fan of like the Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels, this is like a show we've waited for like our whole lives, like a live action Ahsoka Tano show."
Mm-hmm.
Like once upon a time, even Filoni was like, "Never thought I'd really get this." And the fact that it's his character, he's writing it and doing it, like I think there's going to be a lot of tasteful things brought in that for the diehards who have watched all the previous lore, I'm not going to, don't have the time or the interest. I think it's going to be great for them. I guess what I'm hoping for is please make it good for me too, the casual fan, because that's my biggest fear. I want a Star Wars Jedi show. I don't want to have to know a whole lot of backstory though to enjoy it in general.
Well, see, honestly, from what I've heard, I've seen some rumblings that you kind of do need to know a lot of the backstory
Oh
for
boy.
the show, which I almost wonder because that would make sense.
It would.
Is if they need this show to sort of set up the next season of Mando, then like they would need it to exist.
Mm-hmm.
But if the show's going to be so reliant on like Clone Wars and Rebels and content that like most casual fans didn't watch, then you would want it to really only be spread around by word of mouth of super fans
That's
that
true.
have seen all of that stuff.
Not to mention you want those people driving people to more content on Disney
Yeah,
Plus. So I do get
exactly.
that. I do get that. Like as a marketer in my head, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. Uh well, let me just sit here and say, if anything, I hope it doesn't bury my enjoyment of it as much as it could otherwise. I think the most impressive thing would be if it does make me want to say, you know what, maybe I should go and watch more of her backstory and stuff. I mean, people have literally put together guides for this and say,
Yeah, I mean, and
watch
honestly,
these, but
yeah,
not these.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about it before when we were preview or when we were talking about the show a couple months ago. It's just that like the Clone Wars definitely, I think, had a barrier because people thought of it as a kids show, but there was a lot of really adult stuff in that show.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, one of the biggest Ahsoka Tano storylines in the Clone Wars was a couple episodes series storyline, and one of the episodes was the trial of Ahsoka Tano, because she was framed for murder. Does that sound like a kid's show to you?
No, it does not.
And so it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of really interesting themes. I mean, and for anybody who doesn't know, just the main concept of the character, Ahsoka Tano as a character was first introduced as Anakin Skywalker's apprentice back in the days before episode 3 and the fall of the Republic and stuff. And so I mean, as a character, there's a lot to like unpack there, and there's a really great story or episode once they did the final season with the fall of the Republic and Order 66 and all that stuff with Darth Vader. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested, if you're at all, if you want to know more, definitely watch some of the old stuff and the source material that would get you informed. And yeah, I mean, I just hope that it's good. I just hope that it's not like bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a year where I just
because there's going to be a lot of people very upset about it.
I know there is, and even super fans, I'm sure there's going to be stuff in here that they don't agree with, right? That's typically how things like this go. I swear the mantra I've had for every movie this calendar year has been please be good. Like literally just please be good.
It definitely feels like there's a lot of people that somehow became allergic to making good projects.
Oh man.
And I don't understand what happened.
And unfortunately a lot of them have been Disney things, right? I mean, I've already and we'll get to it when the time comes, but I mean, I already think that the hype for like Loki season 2 is out of the water simply because so many Marvel projects have been underwhelming this year.
No,
we've talked about it right on here. And I only bring up Marvel because this is another Disney property.
Yeah.
But,
No, I mean, I will say, the Filoni and Fav stuff is kind of separate from the MCU issues.
Oh, completely.
I mean, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni haven't really had any bombs. I mean, there were a lot of comments about the last season of Mando, but I think it ended well. I mean, we got to, I think,
and those people.
The journey was questionable, but it got to a point that I think was
those
enjoyable.
people, including you for a while there, can shut
well,
up.
Yes,
Mando,
yes,
Mando season 3 was good. Was it as good as the previous 2? No. Was it still really good? Yes.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I will just say though that the as far as within the Star Wars fan base, this is quote a Filoni legacy game. And I mean, because Dave Filoni created Ahsoka Tano as a character. It has always been his baby, his brainchild,
literally his baby. Yeah.
And so you have to hope that he's going to do the character justice with this show, and that he has been trying to get this show for, I don't know, 15 years. I
mean, I think I even saw a soundbite of like he would have taken an adult show of her animated. I mean, just like anything to continue telling the character's story. And just as a creator, as a writer myself, and as a writer yourself, like whatever narrative you're trying to do, like nothing's more painful than not being able to push the narrative forward when you want to. You know what I mean? And he's getting to, and he's got Rosario Dawson to portray an accurately aged Ahsoka Tano. I say that in terms of, I think that was a really good casting choice in Mandalorian of like how much time has passed, and she's been through quite a lot in life now. And so I will definitely be checking it out myself, probably not Tuesday, but on Wednesday, if not later into the week. And hopefully we'll have some good things to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just add that as far as uh the directors for the episodes, we have those out.
Mm-hmm.
And Filoni is directing, or so there's 8 episodes, and Filoni looks like is directing 2 of them.
Cool.
And then there's a handful of other people involved, including um Peter Ramsey, who co-directed Into the Spider-Verse,
Yeah.
and I can never say this, Rick Fawiyama, who has done a ton of Mando episodes. Um, and so I think that we kind of have an idea of what to expect there. I mean, I wish there would have been a little bit more into as far as what could possibly be getting. I mean, it would have been cool to see a Bryce Dallas Howard episode, but
We
I
got a
think there
lot
was a reason for who got the directing nods on that.
we got a lot of hit makers on this, bottom line.
Yeah.
And I really think this could be one of those things where like going back to what you were saying, my dude, about not having the same amount of hype and maybe marketing push at least at the premiere. I really think that if this is good out of the gate, a lot of word of mouth is gonna cause people to go see this. Like if
Yeah.
Ahsoka fans love it, they're gonna tell every single person they know, go watch a show. Go watch it. If you know nothing about Ahsoka, just go watch Ahsoka. Just go watch it. Um, you don't have to twist my arm to do it. I'm already just interested in this.
Yeah,
The
this
very
definitely
concept.
could.
But
This
yeah.
definitely could be a little bit of a slow burner where it's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like it comes out, the diehards watch it weekly, and then it's like, and then like after it's over, people like, oh, you have to like this, you have to
Right.
go watch
Like
this. So
think about the hype that was there for Obi-Wan when it first came out, that by halfway through the show
mm,
everyone was like, this sucks. Like a lot of people.
yeah,
I liked it all the way through, but like the diehards who were really pushing it at the beginning were just telling people not to watch it by halfway through the show. Like I hope this is the other way. And yeah, we'll be checking it out.
yeah. I mean, my only main concern is that
Mm-mm.
8 episodes feels like a lot. That feels way
Well,
too long.
8 episodes filled with good stuff will be worth it. I mean, I don't know.
If it's good, yeah.
I mean, I just think
But
that
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm a little concerned that they'll be able to get 8 episodes worth of material out of the plot. That's just me, though. I mean,
yeah,
that's
I
just
mean,
me.
you were concerned about the episode cuts in Mando season 3, at least initially, deservedly so. I mean, I really think you had some good points there. The thing is that I will say though is that we've seen now good shows with like the 6 episodes and 8 episodes. We've had things get bloated with smaller, chunked episodes like She-Hulk had. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of smaller ones. I mean, we've seen like I don't like. There's people talking about the episode length of like Secret Invasion. It's like, look, I just think that if you make a good show, it doesn't matter the amount of episodes. Um, and that's my main takeaway for at least Disney Plus content right now. I don't necessarily feel the same way about every other thing I see on streaming services based on length, but the length, I don't know. I just think that if you just tell a good story with a narrative that's edited in a good way, the episode length shouldn't matter. And I would encourage
Mm-hmm.
you, I point this direction because in my Zoom box, you're this direction. I would, and just as my fellow talking head, I would encourage people like yourself who are worried about that to keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing is, I would just say I'm really intrigued to see Grand Admiral Thrawn in
Yeah.
live action,
Yeah. People love Thrawn.
reprised by Lars Mikkelsen. So, very interesting
Reprised.
stuff
So did
there.
he? So did he voice the character in like the
Yeah, in
animated? Okay.
Rebels. Yep.
Yeah. See, that's
Yeah.
the kind of stuff I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But I love that. Once again, voice actor gets to portray there.
Of which that's a whole conversation. Is that a lot of people are like low key upset that Ashley Eckstein, who voiced Ahsoka Tano in the shows, didn't get
Yeah.
to do the live action. But I mean, there's a reason. Like,
Yeah.
to be fair to Ashley, I think she did great in the shows, but I don't think. I mean, Rosario Dawson is a much much more complete live action actor.
Yeah, I think that without going into too much detail about this, I think there are certain actors who have done both voice work and live action work who are clearly better at one than the other. I mean, I just think that's the case with it. Like, I think that's the case with every actor, actress, just my opinion. Like, if they've done both, and it might be one of those situations where she's a great voice actress, but we need like a better live action,
Yeah,
which is really a shout out to what's it, Katie Sackhoff, for being
yeah,
able to
Katie
pull off
Sackhoff, yeah,
Bo-Katan in both ways, so that in some ways, some people said her portrayal as a live action is even better than the
yeah,
animated because they actually get to see her like be the character. So I don't know. I just think that comes down to look, not every actor can do everything, and you got to make it good.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
just you got to make tough calls. It's the business, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's tough when you see a lot of people able to do both for that happen to be involved in the same project. But yeah, it's definitely, I think, just something that you have to kind of deal with. But
yeah.
although,
Well, yeah, that's what we got.
yeah,
That's what we got. Let us know. And you know what? Pretty good episode, Casen, if I do say myself, for us like 2 days ago, not really knowing exactly what we were going
yeah,
to talk about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you know,
We're almost done here with the dog days of summer, trying to milk as much content as we
yeah,
can out of
where
the summer.
where like we're gonna hit a situation soon where we have too much to talk about middle of the
Yeah,
football week,
yeah,
and it's like, okay, what needs to be cut? Like, I really think I was even thinking about like, oh man, we could really hit that situation. Good problem to have, but as I say, it's a good problem to have. It's still a problem that requires a solution. It's typically what I say for that. But great stuff as always. As always, thank you so much for listening out there and watching, because we've got the YouTube channel now. Um,
yeah.
Anything and everything that you feel like you want to comment on us on, those of you that do hit us up per week, we always appreciate it. And even in those that don't, we appreciate you as well. And what's cool, Kason, is that sometimes it's a surprise who might, you might hear who's listening to us. So we appreciate all of you the same. So
Yeah. I've heard from several people that have been using the YouTube already, so that prefer watching stuff on YouTube. So
you know
we
what?
got that up. So if you like to watch a visual medium,
Yeah.
you can check that out.
If you want to see my ugly mug talk to Kason's beautiful mug, you can absolutely do that. That's just that's just that's an option for you now. Sometimes also, like, we can actually make visual aids and references, and like you can see them, which is nice if
Yeah.
you really want to. So it feels like some of the other podcasts even that I consume. I will say this right before we roll out of here. I have this like visual display board that I've sent you guys pictures of before. It's called a Tidbit. You should look it up. They're really cool. It looks like a light bright board. One of the things you can program in there is like YouTube channel stats. So like I have a ticker. It basically works like the ticker on the bottom of your typical sports channel page, like with sports scores and news and whatever you want to put on it. It one of the things, like, I have our YouTube channel sitting there, and it's like been cool to kind of see some of the view numbers and subscription numbers go up over the last week. So it's like, oh cool, I actually have like a channel I'm contributing content to now, that these numbers will hopefully go up and not down as we continue to go
Yeah.
here.
Please don't.
Yeah,
Please
just
don't.
don't go down. Just give us the subscription just for the heck of it, okay? We're doing our best out here. But anyway, as always, we appreciate you so much. It's all we got. So, as always, man, this is Kellan,
This is Casen.
and we will see you as always at the next stop.